This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.
Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of the Bullscas with me, George Holloway. This week I'm joined by BBC Hereford and Worcester's Carson Wishart to discuss the abandonment of Hereford's FA Cup qualifying match at Sporting Khalsa on Saturday after goalkeeper Raven Constable was subjected to racist abuse. We'll talk about the rescheduling of the fixture for next Tuesday before Keith Hall joins us to preview the Bulls' return to National League North action this coming Saturday. Along the way, there'll be stories of Coventry's 1987 FA Cup win, led by former Bulls manager John Sillett, and analysis of Hereford's home struggles over the last 12 months. We hope you enjoy. Carson, thanks for joining me. There's only one place to start, really, and that's with the abandonment of Hereford's FA Cup second qualifying round match at Sporting Khalsa on Saturday after Sporting goalkeeper Raven Constable was subjected to racist abuse. Play was halted on 67 minutes when Constable alerted referee Callum Fisk, and the decision was subsequently made to call the game off. Hereford FC have since banned two individuals with immediate effect, while a West Mercia police investigation into the incident remains ongoing. You were there, of course, at the ground. It's disgusting and abhorrent behaviour that no one should ever be subjected to, Carson.
Never. It was absolute, as you say, you use the right word there. It was disgusting. I was thinking back to the 30-odd years I've been covering live football matches, George. I have never, ever seen anything like that at all. And your heart just goes out to Raven Constable, really. No human being should have to put up with that. And it was his reaction that I got in the car and I felt sick to my stomach because his reaction was so raw and he was so angry. And the fact that I don't know if you know the makeup of Khalsa's ground, but the Hereford fans were behind his goal. And there's kind of a 12-foot fence there. It's very unusual. You've got the advertising hoardings and then you've just got this natural fence. And if it was any other ground and he could have jumped over the hoardings, the scene could have been a lot worse because he was desperate to try and get hold of these Hereford fans, and who knows what would have happened then. But he ran the circumference of the ground to try and get to them. And it was actually, I think, some Sporting Khalsa fans, and you've got to give credit to them, that held him back initially from getting to the Hereford contingent. So awful scenes. It should never happen in 2025. And don't normally put a lot of tweets out, but I did say on Saturday night when I reflected on it that the club have to react quickly with an FA punishment pending, and they did exactly that. I think club as a whole, Paul Caddis, the manager, Chris Ammons, the chairman, Jamie Griffiths, have acted impeccably on this. In fact, they've identified those responsible, one or two individuals, very quickly, and they've taken decisive action as an investigation is ongoing. So you have to give the club full credit, but we were just kind of chatting off air, and I think it's, Hereford's got such a great reputation around the country. They're known for their FA Cup exploits, Newcastle in 1972 and so forth. And people might think, oh, no, Hereford are racist. Well, they're not racist. I think every football club up and down the country has this element, even if it's 0.01% in their club. Yes, it's up to clubs to stamp it out. But as Paul Caddis spoke so eloquently afterwards, it's a society problem, George. And how do you open the doors to a football club on the whole, and particularly when alcohol is involved as well? And that's absolutely no excuse. But I think fans suddenly feel emboldened, if you like, that they can kind of say what they like to another human being who's, 10 yards away from them. So difficult. And Paul Caddis, credit to him, he was word perfect, and what an ambassador for the club as well. And he just said he doesn't want them there, stamp them out. It's just not acceptable in 2025, is it?
And Paul Caddis and all the players and staff present, Carson, took decisive action on Saturday to say, we're going to make a stand. Enough is enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And they made that decision pretty quickly as well. They didn't linger around. And I thought it was absolutely the right decision on the day. There was a little bit of confusion. I think, first of all, wasn't sure if something was thrown at Constable, but he was talking to the referee and trying to explain the fact he was being abused. When this was going on, Paul Caddis, the coaching staff with Chris Ammons, made the decision, get the players off. Sporting Khalsa players were off as well, and there was no way the atmosphere went so dark, which was a really entertaining FA Cup game as well. Really enjoyable. Both sides playing really well. Spirit of the Cup, 2-1 at the time. Some great goals as well. Hereford leading. But the mood completely changed, and there was no way in the world that match could have carried on in that kind of atmosphere. It went very, very dark, and a lot of solemn faces as well. I did interview Chris Ammons, who was good enough to come on the radio literally minutes after the incident. So he was live on BBC Hereford and Worcester with me. And he spoke very well as well. And he said that they will act, and they will act quickly. And they're doing a lot behind the scenes. They have been doing to kick out racism. But this is radio, of course, and you can't see what's going on. But Chris Ammons' face, the blood poured from his face. He was ghostly white, and again, it's so hard to control, isn't it? But the club, as I say, I repeat that, I thought they've acted absolutely impeccable in this situation.
Raven Constable posted on X following the game, "I'm emotional and angry about yesterday when I was subjected to racist abuse. No one should ever have to face discrimination or hatred because of who they are. Racism has no place in our game. Thanks to all my teammates and staff at Sporting Khalsa and Hereford FC for your support." Sporting Khalsa assistant manager Jemiah Richards revealed after the games, Carson, that Constable had already experienced racist abuse this season, but had let it slide. A marker needs to be put down that this is not acceptable, and you're not welcome at football grounds around the country.
Yes, couldn't agree more with that. I mean, there's been some talk whether Hereford should have been kicked out of the competition altogether. Personally, I don't think that is the right decision because, as we say, this is a very tiny minority that represent the club, and why spoil it for the rest of the fan base and for the club itself and the players and the coaching staff? So I don't think that would have been the right decision, but I can understand why those calls were made, and particularly if you're from a Sporting Khalsa perspective, you would think, well, hang on, maybe that is the fair outcome to this. But the FA have looked at it. They decided that it should be a replay, which is the 23rd of September, a Tuesday night, where the game will be played in its entirety as well, which I think is a very good decision in terms of scheduling. But what's come out of this is the fan base, the real fan base, decent people have got together, George, and as you know, they've got a GoFundMe page organised. So if anything good comes out of this, that is it. The fact is that the good people have stood up and they're going to make a change here. So I hope the game goes ahead. All indications are Hereford fans will be allowed to go back to the West Midlands and be there and support their club. And I just hope some kind of gesture is made on the field as well. And maybe, just maybe, out of a really horrible incident, something can come good of this. People come together and they realise that we can't let this happen. And I think that is a really good outcome.
As you mentioned, at the time of recording this, Bulls fans have raised nearly £2,000 for a banner that will read "Red card to racism, racists not welcome here," and 2,500 red pieces of card. Both are planned to be held up by supporters at the beginning of Hereford's home match against Worksop this Saturday. Any additional funds raised will be donated to a charity or project of Raven Constable's choice. It's a great example of true fans coming together in difficult moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. If any good comes out of it, that is it. Really good to see that. I only heard that yesterday. And I just hope it's some comfort to Raven Constable, because to get into that kind of state, I'm not sure what was said, or, it must have been horrendous for him because the anger was so raw. So I think that will be some small crumb of comfort that the Hereford fans have reacted. But as I say, going back to my earlier comment, it's just not Hereford FC. My 11-year-old son plays on a Sunday, and, you even hear it there sometimes, can you believe it? Children's football. We need to change, and maybe, as I say, if any good comes out of this, maybe that is it, that fans are stamping it right back down again, and metaphorically, of course, and hopefully there will be change going forward.
Well, the FA have announced that the tie will be replayed this coming Tuesday, with the winner facing a trip to Hemel Hempstead in the third qualifying round. Hereford will just have to go again, Carson.
They'll have to go again, yes, and it becomes a busy schedule, doesn't it? So away from all the ugly matters off the pitch, talking about things on the pitch, it's a pretty good draw. It's a club that's on their level. Away from home, I was going to say maybe Hereford prefer a home tie, but the way things go at Edgar Street sometimes, maybe they're happy to go away and play there. Was it just outside of London? So maybe they can go there and play freely. But there'll be no fear from Hereford playing Hemel Hempstead. They've started well in National League South, so they have to get through this tie, and that is no gimme, by the way, George. That they will get through the Sporting Khalsa tie, particularly with all the emotion attached to it Championship now, so we'll be interested to see how the players react when they go back there. And credit to Khalsa, I thought they were a really good side as well. They got some great players. Whittaker in the middle, I thought should be playing, one or two levels above. In fact, we did joke on air. I was doing the commentary with Terry Goodwin, and lots of listeners will know. And we were saying, well, this is just as much of a scouting exercise here for Paul Caddis, because at one point I remember I did see him before the incident and before kickoff. He put his arm around Whittaker. So maybe that's a player like Amari Sterling-James, who played well for Rushall in that horrible defeat last season, but Amari Sterling-James was the best player on the pitch and then ended up signing for Hereford. Maybe we'll see one or two Sporting Khalsa players come down to Edgar Street, but who knows. But yeah, it's no gimme for the Khalsa type. They get through that one, and then they've got that trip down to Hempstead just 4 days later on the 27th. And of course, it's just not about glory as well, the FA Cup, particularly a club like Hereford who rely on the gates attendances to swell the coffers. That's what the FA Cup does for you. It's all about getting money in the bank. And all these qualifying rounds, I had to actually Google how many qualifying rounds are there before you play in the first round. And of course, there's a couple more before they get to the first round proper. So they got the second qualifying round, third qualifying, fourth, and then I believe it is the first round. But then the League One and League Two clubs come into it, and that could be Hereford's final, couldn't it? Imagine that, Cardiff away, the Cardiff City Stadium. We're now in League One, of course. That would be an incredible tie. But even the fact you got Swindon down the road, Caddis' old club, Newport County would be pretty tasty as well. So Forest Green even. There's lots of opportunities there for Hereford, not only to get some money in the bag, and who knows, if you get to the first round proper, I think it's around about £45,000 if you win that one, and it's about £15,000 if you lose. But that could end up funding a player that ultimately gets Hereford over the line in terms of the playoff picture, if they keep on improving, which we hope they do. So, yeah, it's crucial. But more than that for me, and as a fan as well of my home club, which is Coventry City, 1987, I will go to my deathbed, and that I'm sure apparently your memories flash in front of you, and that'll be one of them. Keith Ouchin with a diving header from a Bennett cross from the right-hand side. So it's all about making memories as well. The stories to be written, if you like. So we just hope that Hereford continue this. As we know, they've had a poor start to the season, but they went into the Khalsa game 3 unbeaten, so they've got something to build on now. They were playing well against Khalsa. Lovely goal from Alani Edwards as well. Then you had that Andy Williams header. And I just feel they're starting to gel now. Lots of disruption at the start of the season. Paul Caddis said to me after the Radcliffe game, where they lost 1-0 there, he said to me in the post-match interview that the players that he brought in just weren't basically good enough at that level. It may have been fitness was a huge problem with some of the players coming in. And to his word, he said he'd make changes, and he did. And the players he's brought in, namely Michael Parker and Montel Gibson, they are a cut above. They're real quality. And already you can see how they're solidifying the side, and they're giving them a little bit of an extra dimension as well, which is really good to see. Particularly, we all know about Montel Gibson, what he did first time round at Hereford. We didn't know much about Michael Parker. And what I love about this, we had a feeling there may be a signing, but half an hour before kick-off, before his debut, it was, Michael Parker's on the team sheet. Who was he? And you got reporters in the press box scrambling around to find out more about this player. The whistle starts, and you think, yes, he is quality. The way he can bring the ball forward, the way he can have the ball with his feet for that 6'6" defender. And you look at him thinking, yeah, it's got to be a natural centre-back. And then Caddis sees him and says, hang on, he can play on the left. Apparently he does that with West Brom as well. He can play on the left-hand side, and he gives Hereford this whole new outlet down that left-hand side. And he was getting crosses in the Darlington game, which I didn't cover, but apparently he was really effective on that left-hand side. And opposition players really found him difficult to deal with. So to answer your question, it is tricky, but I think Hereford have got nothing to fear. I think they can do it there, and then they can look forward to hopefully progress into the first round proper, whenever that is. When they do get there, it could be a real day to remember, George.
And you mentioned Coventry's 87 FA Cup win there, Carson, and of course the two clubs linked by John Sillett, Hereford's third division title-winning manager.
Oh, absolutely. Snoz, and what a legend he is. They've only just recently put a statue of him and George Curtis up outside the CBS Arena. And I don't know. I'm not going to ask your age, George. I'm not going to embarrass you that way. But I don't know. People will remember. And I think it was kind of the neutrals final. Coventry were always struggling in the Premier League. I mean, for me as a fan, it was like, right, we've survived relegation again. Great. That was it. This one year we have this brilliant cup run. We're playing Tottenham. They've got legends in their game like Glenn Hoddle, Chris Waddle, the Diamond Lights duo, no less. What a track that is on Top of the Pops. Anyway, they've got these class players, Clive Allen. Coventry were the underdogs, but you felt like the whole country. And when the FA Cup then was huge, because we didn't have live football on the TV, it would start at 9 o'clock in the morning. You would sit there as a cross-legged teenager watching the whole thing. I was 15 at the time. And Coventry winning, I think I've only cried once or twice in my life. Some of the sad moments, but some of the happy moments as well. And I cried like a baby that day because I grew up in South Wales and it was constantly, we got off topic here a little bit, but why do you support Coventry City? Why didn't you support Man United or Liverpool? And we're in Wales. And I said, well, my dad was from there and everything. But yeah, it was a moment of pride. And that's going back to, linking it back to Hereford. And I was one in 1972, so I can't quite remember that. But from a commentator's point of view, I've watched it again and again, that moment, because I'm a big fan, and God rest his soul, of Motti. And that was his first ever big commentary on Match of the Day as well. And I did a little piece for BBC Hereford and Worcester the other day where I sat in the press box and just reminisced about it, and I did those exact words that he said. They matched it with the real commentary on the radio, and I've kept that because that's one to show play to my grandkids.
And an FA Cup run can help create a really positive feeling around a club.
Yeah, it's the FA Cup for you. It gets you in the heart, where I think the league is always in the head, isn't it? And I don't know about you as a fan, and I'm sure Hereford fans do this. I'm constantly looking at the league table. And I'm doing it now when I research the games, going into the commentaries for the BBC, and I'm thinking, right, so if Hereford win this on Saturday, then they win on Tuesday, they get 6 points, right? That could take them, 2 points outside the playoffs, and the picture will look completely different, and the narrative changes. And fans, and I'm one of them with my club, we're very fickle. You win and you're the best team in the world, you lose and you're the worst team. And I like what Paul Caddis said to me in one of the post-match interviews. He's always very level-headed, he's always very transparent and very honest. In fact, he's one of the best managers I've ever dealt with over 30-odd years of covering football. And he just said, look, we don't get too highs with the wins, we don't get too lows with the lows. And I know he's working so hard, along with Adam Rooney, and other people like Chris Hammond's behind the scenes, Jamie Griffiths as well. They're working so hard to get things right. And for me, it's, you've got to have passion, but it's not just a job for these guys. They absolutely live it 24/7. Can you imagine it? Doing that job. I bet Paul's WhatsApp does never stop. 3 o'clock in the morning, he's got a player saying, well, I got a slight niggle in my calf, Paul. I can't make the game tomorrow, And I can imagine Paul, pacing up and down the bedroom going, what am I going to do now? So they live it. Paul has said he's not a Hereford fan, but, what manager is, apart from if you're Chris Wilder and you go back for the third time to your club at Sheffield United. He's not a fan, but he is so determined to bring success to Hereford, and you would love to see it, wouldn't you? So unlucky last season, that game against Scunthorpe, where it just didn't fire. 1 point in the end off the playoffs. It could have been all so different. And do you know what it is, George? I think Hereford do really well against the bigger clubs. It is the Rushells, and they go there, and I don't know what it is. They just don't rise to the occasion, and it was just that odd point. Those games could have made all the difference, and if they got to the playoffs, then it's a bit of a lottery. Who knows? We could be talking about Conference National League football right now. But it is different for Hereford. They've got this financial model and this part-time status, and a lot of people look at that and go, well, how can they be part-time with such big gates? They average around about 2.6, 2.8, don't they, at the moment at Edgar Street? And you just think, well, I understand it. I was at a Q&A at Leicester before the season started with Chris Hammonds and Paul Caddis, and they made the point, look, we've got this history. We've got to be careful with the pennies because we all know what happened in the past. And it's that hard balancing act for the board to kind of say, right, we want success, but we don't want to do it at any cost. We don't want to break the bank for this. So at the moment, they're doing it right. But my view is, going forward, there will have to be changes, say, certainly over the next 5 years. If you stand still, if you like, particularly at this level, step 6, you're kind of going backwards, aren't you? And at some point, I think they would have to look at additional investment, whether that's selling the club outright. We've seen that happen at other clubs, particularly in National League North. We've had Dubai consortiums and millionaires here and there. perhaps down the road, maybe a fusion between the existing board and new investment to push the club forward, so they can go at the very least to a hybrid model, perhaps full-time, because the training, and Caddis has mentioned this on several occasions, he's absolutely right, when you can only train twice a week, and that is only for an hour or two up at Studley in Warwickshire, funny enough where I am now. I think it's not sustainable long term if you want Hereford to be back where a lot of fans think they should be, which is at least playing on a National League stage, and then who knows, pushing for the Football League in the next 5 years. But they're going in the right trajectory. So at the moment, I think there's a fear among some of the fan base. There's a bit of a stagnation going on, particularly with the poor start to the season. But I'm sure people much more intelligent than me and much more finance savvy, if you like, are having these conversations behind the scenes anyway. You know, there is a 5-year plan, if you like, going forward for the club. And you know what? You would love to see it. You'd love to see the Bulls back up there. You know, playing, you know, perhaps if Cardiff, well, I think they're doing well, aren't they, in League One? But if Cardiff, you know, end up dropping down again, who knows? You know, that could be a regular fixture. Certainly against clubs like Newport County, Cheltenham, Forest Green Rovers, Shrewsbury, all these derbies are there in the making. Because one thing I will say, National League North, Regional League, George, I don't know what you make of this. There's nothing regional about it for me. I don't think I've done so many miles in my life. These Hereford players, they come back from somewhere like South Shields and they've got to get up the next morning to go to work. It's not the most glamorous of leagues either, is it? And particularly in winter when the postponements start ratcheting up and you're going Tuesday, Saturday, which Hereford had to do, remember February last year, and they come out of that really well. And that just shows for me not just what you can do on the pitch, you can do a little step over, wherever, nice diagonal. It's character, it's spirit. And that's what Paul Caddis has got in abundance. I think he's starting to radiate in the kind of players he recruits, how gritty they are. And I think there's a lot of gritty performers, Carl Howkins, Matt Preston, the goalkeeper Theo Richardson. There's a real core group there of steel within that squad. And they've got that nice little bit of flair coming in now. Alani Edwards I'm really impressed with. I think Eno Ento, once he proves his fitness and gets a little bit fitter, I think he can be a real weapon for Hereford. And if they can get through this little period, Worksop won't be easy, of course, newly promoted side. But if they can get a really convincing win there, the Hereford fans will really believe, particularly at Edgar Street. Because a lot of times when I'm commentating up and down the country, I'm thinking, blimey, there's only about, we're in Darlington on a Tuesday night and there's only about 50 hearty Hereford fans who have made the trip up. And I'm thinking it's such a shame that the home fans are not seeing this. Of course, they watch the highlights, but it's really difficult to watch the whole 90 minutes. And and I just hope they can start turning it on at home.
Let's take a look at some of the results from the FA Cup second qualifying round. Scarborough Athletic were beaten 2-0 on the road by Step 3 Ashton United. Telford earned an impressive 3-1 win over local rivals Kidderminster, with Harriers goalkeeper Christian Dibble seeing red in second half added time. Aldchurch beat National League North Leamington by 3-0. It finished Bootle 1, Darlington 3, South Shields 2, Guiseley 1, and Stanleybridge Celtic 1, Chester 2. Radcliffe Southport finished 1-1 before the Merseyside club came out 3-2 victors in a replay on Tuesday evening. Chippenham clinched a 2-1 win at former National League North side Gloucester City. Westbury United came from behind to beat full-time Oxford City 3-2. Alfreton's miserable start to the season continued as they lost 3-0 at Spalding United, while Weston-super-Mare were 3-0 winners over Taunton Town in a replay after the two sides had drawn 1-1 down in Somerset. And if Hereford get past Sporting Khalsa on Tuesday night, their opponents will be Hemel Hempstead, who beat Bishop Stortford 4-1 to reach the third qualifying round. I'm delighted to say that Keith Hall has joined us for a look ahead to Worksop Town this coming Saturday as Hereford return to National League North action. The Tigers are back in the 6th tier for the first time since 2007 and have made a respectable start to the season. They sit 11th in the table after 8 games, having picked up 3 wins and 3 losses. We saw the problems fellow newcomers Bedford caused Hereford, Keith, and Worksop have the tools to do damage as well.
I think they have, really. A couple of strikers there, Liam Hughes and Aaron Martin, that Hereford will have to look out for. But on the plus side for the Bulls, the Tigers have not done too well away from home so far, and their only victory on the road was a narrow 1-0 win at Peterborough Sports. So maybe Hereford are playing them at a good time. 3-match unbeaten run, and obviously we have to concentrate on this game on Saturday.
One man Hereford will have to keep an eye on, Keith, is Aaron Martin, who has 5 goals to his name in 8 games.
Yeah, him and Hughes probably be the main threats for Hereford, but centre-back, they've got a very experienced centre-back in Luke Waterfall as well. He's played for a host of clubs, including Shrewsbury locally, but then Hartlepool, Grimsby, Lincoln, Wrexham. So, he will be tasked, I presume, with keeping Remy Campbell and Montel Gibson quiet, because obviously Gibson hasn't played and didn't feature in the cup game because he's cup tied with Matlock, so he'll be fresh. So I'm looking forward to a decent game.
The Bulls have struggled against newly promoted sides over the last 12 months or so, Carson, and Paul Caddis will be trying to put the struggles at Edgar Street behind him.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's expectation. Fans of all clubs, when you play a newly promoted one, they expect to railroad them, particularly a club of Hereford standing, and the fact, they're pretty grizzled now in National League North, aren't they? Is it the 7th season or 8th season now? So, yeah, they will be expected to beat Worksop. But as Keith said there, they've had a really solid start to the season, and they'll be tricky opponents. We saw it with Bedford. They're up, and we've got this thing where, there's a great stat, isn't there? I think I've got it here. I've got my notes from Saturday, where Hereford have conceded 5 goals in the first 5 minutes in 5 of their 7 matches. That was before the Khalsa game. So that is an issue against Worksop, because you've got the expectation and you've got to start on the right foot. And Keith will probably have more insight in this to me, but I have asked Caddis in the post-match interview, what is going on here? And he just said it's a mentality thing, as simple as that. Players not switching on from the first whistle. So I'm not sure why that is. Is there a little bit of stage fright playing at Edgar Street, which you've touched on, George? And some people I read online, some fans saying, is it the fact that these players are not training in Hereford in the week? They're not living in the city like they used to do, the old United players, where United put up a house for players to all stay in, and they'd be in and around the city and they would soak that up. They're kind of being bussed in, or as I saw at Sporting Khalsa, they're arriving in their own cars. And suddenly there they are in this grand old lady of a stadium, noisy fans, and they're pretty close to the players. I think the first 5 or 10 minutes, they're a little bit overawed by that. They've got to get past that. I'm sure they will. And once they get on a roll, we saw it in February last season where they won something like 7 out of their 8 games. I think they will start climbing up the table. The fans breathe a sigh of relief. That transmits onto the players. The players then can play with that little bit more freedom, a little bit more expression. I'm not talking about all the players, by the way, because I think Amari Sterling-James should be back up there playing 2 or 3 levels above like he used to be. Absolutely being outstanding, consistent performer at home or away. So it's not all the players, but you've got these young players coming in like Ento, even like a Michael Parker who's done really well. Some other players as well who are playing almost academy football, and then there they are playing proper men's football at a proper stadium with fans. Of course, there's no fans in these academy games, maybe 1 or 2 mum or dads or uncle and aunties. So it's having to deal with that. It's all part of their progression. That's why these big clubs like West Brom, Villa have sent these players down to get that experience. So you can't have it always. You can't have a player who's coming from West Brom, from Aston Villa, ready-made. This is all about their learning, their education and their development. So I think as fans, us in the media, we have to be a little bit more patient with them and give them a little bit more leeway in that situation. But once they get over that and they absorb the energy of the fans and use it as a positive, turn that old cliche, turn that stadium into a fortress, make it a fearful place for opposition players to come, and it will be for them, if the fans are behind them. But what I have noticed with Bulls fans, and we commentate in similar positions in the Merton stand, if things are not going well, particularly if Hereford go behind quickly, that Merton stand goes from quite, lively, noisy to almost absolute silence. I can understand it, as football fans are all fickle. They paid money to get in there. They want to be entertained as well as see results. But when you see the Meadow end quiet as well, I think players then they react to that. If they don't feel the love and support out there, they kind of shrink into themselves, particularly the younger ones. So again, it's a quandary for Paul Caddis and Adam Rooney to solve, and to inject that belief in them that they are a good team, they are good players, and they should, on paper, putting someone like Worksop, newly promoted club, to the sword on Saturday, and then they can build from there, and then go into the FA Cup with that freedom.
What do you think's behind Hereford's issues at Edgar Street?
Well, I go back long enough to remember John Truick and Richard O'Kelly. Hereford at one stage had real problems at the start of the second half. The first 5 minutes after the restart, we were conceding goals. And basically, in the end, they started taking the players out midway through a half-time break. And they would be sprinting and running in front of the supporters, getting themselves fired up. So they stopped that in its tracks. Now, whether that can be done again, I don't know. But I know players go through pre-match routines these days. But this was quite intense to get them on edge and get straight into it, and in the end that actually worked. And I remember even Aldershot in the playoff semi-final, Richard O'Kelly took the players right around the pitch, because we were down to 10 men and so they went round the outside of the pitch and getting a support going, because it was going to be so tough being a man down. So there are all these different issues that can work in your favour, and maybe something like that with the youngsters, as we've just heard from Carson, maybe because they're not used to that scenario, they need a bit of support, more than just the word support. They just need that extra impetus to get going.
Is it easy to fix, Carson?
No, it's not, because it's in the head, isn't it? It's not, if you're lacking fitness, then you train harder, you train an extra day. It's all in the head, and all sport, and this is one of the reasons I became a sports commentator. I'm fascinated by the psychology of sport. I'd love to write a book about it one day if I can get around to that, but it's all about just switching that mentality around to be really positive and use the energy of the crowd. And it's easy to say than do, because at 19 it's difficult. Maybe Premier League clubs do it, and they have psychologists there. They should, I don't know if they've looked at that already, Hereford, if there's enough money in the kitty to bring in a psychologist, even just for a day or two, just to sit with the team and talk to them about that kind of thing, and about having that confidence in their mind to go out there, and strut a bit, puff out their chest and play with that kind of expression and freedom. As I say, a lot of the players do that, but there's just one or two, and I think that affects then the team dynamic. They have to sort out that first 10 minutes of a game. Second halves at Edgar Street, they always seem to play better for me. Maybe that is the answer. Who knows? Right? Then again, I haven't got a clue what the going rate for a psychologist is these days. You add VAT, it's probably not. It's probably a pretty penny, but maybe that's the way forward. Who knows?
Do you think that's something they should consider, Keith?
Well, I just really think they just need to be fired up. Maybe have a really intensive session, even 5 minutes before the start of the match, just to get them, a lot of it is lack of communication. Don't get a shout here or there. Maybe you'd get that if you were one-on-one with someone, just to get that sort of psychology that you've got to mark your man. There's been a couple of instances where opposition players had a little bit of space at the far post, that sort of thing, right from the start of the game, where they're not necessarily, I wouldn't say switched on, that's not the right expression, but they're just not focused on their individual battles, if you like.
Talking about the psychology of all this, there was a lot of upset players in that Hereford squad on Saturday. So this would be the first game after that terrible incident at Sporting Khalsa. So getting the right mindset for the Worksop game, and have they had enough time for their raw anger? So Caddis, I think his biggest job this week going into this Worksop game is getting them in the right state of mind to say, look, what's happened, it's being dealt with. You've now got 90 minutes just to concentrate solely on this game and go out there and do well. So I think that will be pivotal this week.
Well, I think the crowd have got to show that expression of support for the players. I know there's, a campaign with a big banner going to go up at the Meadow End and that sort of thing, but everybody within that crowd has got to show that the players that we're suffering, that we are with them, and that simply shouldn't happen. They need to be weeded out, and the force of the law needs to be put on them, and that move on from there. They've got to be banned for life, hopefully banned from football clubs up and down the country.
After Worksop and the FA Cup, Hereford face South Shields and Macclesfield. Will Paul Caddis see the next 2 or 3 matches as a chance to build some momentum heading into those tricky fixtures, Carson?
difficult games, though, aren't they? Away from home with South Shields as well. You know, they're riding high at the top of the league. That is going to be very tricky. Or they did really well there last season. I remember saying it was a tactical masterclass from Caddis in that game, because he hit South Shields with the counter-attack and the sucker punch, and they got a really good win there, but it will be tricky. But I do feel that they've turned a corner. I think that 3 games unbeaten, the 1 win, the 2 draws, they've kind of stopped the rot now. And I just feel where the first couple of games, it was very much, how can you describe it? They were all over the place, basically. I didn't see a pattern of play. I saw a lot of long balls being lumped forward to an isolated Remade Campbell. But I think they're working through those now, and they look a lot more of a cohesive unit. They seem to be gelling and playing a lot better. And what I like, the way things are evolving here with this particular, the team, the class, if you like, of 25-26, that they've got new ways to play now. They can just play that lone striker, and they can play 2 up top as well, and bring in the wing backs. And I like the fact, we mentioned earlier, Parker can go wide on the left and cause problems down there and deliver the crosses, and they've got that dynamism in midfield. I thought you commentated on it, Keith. I thought I wasn't there, but Sam Osborne's goal against Darlington showed what he's got in his locker. So it's just, there's been a lot of criticism for these players coming in, but you've got to give them time to play minutes and to show what they can do.
Yeah, we're just 8 games in the National League North, and I alluded to it before. You look at the way Buxton got into the playoffs. I think they lost something like 14 matches, something like that. Might have been more, actually. So long way to go. Yep, South Shields are one of the front runners way out there at the moment, setting the table alight, but they've had a similar situation before and sort of stuttered a little bit, so doesn't mean to say you're a front runner, you're bound to win. It's not always the case. People work hard, get close to you as a team, and might make a mistake somewhere along the line and get caught. So don't assume that South Shields are going to win the title 8 games into the season.
And I also think, I never used to think this. I used to think it's just about winning and losing, but I can understand it when coaches and managers say they're looking for performance as much as that. You can see why, because they work with him, well, I was going to say, I nearly said day in, day out. They don't. They work with him twice a week, and it's about seeing those patterns of play improve, that cohesiveness and a way of playing and an identity as well. I didn't think Hereford had that at the start of the season, but just before that game against Khalsa was abandoned, I thought Hereford were playing really well, and I could see what they were trying to do. And I love the way the front 3 now, George and Keith, they can kind of switch it up. You see Omari, Sterling James maybe starting on the left. Within 10 minutes he switched to the right, and then Oento's on the opposite side. Or you've got Leani Edwards plays in the hole, and then suddenly he plays wide. Another player, I think, for me personally, and I could never understand it, doesn't get a lot of praise, is Lawson Diath. I think he's ever consistent. He's really important in that pivotal quarterback role, as I mentioned in commentary, and he rarely puts a foot wrong, doesn't he? He kind of always in the right place at the right time. And what a brilliant goal the other week, that real daisy cutter from 35 yards. So he's got that in his locker as well. And then you've got the likes of Osborne, I think will get better and better. Matt Richards, who seems to be improving as well. So there's lots of promise in that side. I think if it all comes together, and this league, we both know that, Hereford can beat any team home and away on their day. They haven't got to fear absolutely anyone, including South Shields, including Macclesfield. They are the big boys in this league, and they've just got to start playing like it and having that little bit of swagger. Not arrogance, because people don't like that, but that little bit of swagger. You've got to come and beat us, particularly at Edgar Street as well. Make that a fortress.
Where do you see the game being won and lost on Saturday, Keith?
Probably down the flanks. We alluded to Michael Parker joining in that last 15-20 minutes up at Darlington. I thought he really showed that he has got the pace and quick feet to get those crosses in. We just naturally assume 6'6" centre-back's going to come in and he's just going to sit there at the back, but he's so confident at playing the ball out. I think he's actually been one of the catalyst for Hereford suddenly playing out from the back a little bit more, rather than the long diagonals from Theo Richardson straight out to the feet of Oento, as one example on the flank. So it's going to give Hereford a lot more flexibility to play through, and if suddenly a centre-half is charging at you from his own half, that can cause problems. So it depends where Parker is played, assuming he does, what attributes we can get from him to win a particular match. But I think, as you said, Amari Sterling-James, I think he prefers the number 10 position rather to the flanks, but if that's where he's got to play, that's what you've got to bring to the team. It's the sum of the parts, not just the individuals, and it's up to them to work together. I think combinations has been so difficult. I didn't think pre-season helped particularly well. It was a stop-start sort of pre-season campaign and no home friendly. That didn't help. So when players get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and they get combinations going, that's when things definitely pick up, because you've got players that almost telepathically know what the other player's going to do, and that most certainly wasn't there in pre-season.
Carson?
I agree with all that, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, isn't it, both, how it's come in flashes. I mean, the game for me is Buxton away. They were incredible that night. They played almost the perfect game. They were lively, they were creative. They put Aaron Skinner in midfield, who I thought was a revelation. I've never seen him play there. I've only seen him play as a fullback. And he stopped everything. He outplayed Tate Campbell, and that was a lot of Hereford fans there that night. They very much enjoyed that. Yeah, I think it's just about let's get a 90-minute performance together. Keith's absolutely right. They've got to just get that telepathic way of playing. Right, I know you're going to make this 10-yard run now in front of me, so I'm going to play the ball. It's that kind of thing. And, it's 10 new players, 11 new players coming in the summer, and they lost 5 or 6 really influential players as well, the likes of Bay Boss, Jaden White as well, Tate Campbell. The player that they miss more than anyone, I think, is Sammy Robinson, that enforcer in the middle of the pitch. And I think that's what's the kind of the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle a little bit at the moment. They haven't got that kind of solid player who can just put his foot in, and we just hope that this scan finally comes back for Gus Mafuta, because every week we're told by the club, we're waiting for the scan results. They need to get him on the pitch as well. Of course, we haven't really seen Madhu Cisse as well, on loan from Notts County. He's gone back to County. We haven't seen what he can do. So there are players waiting in the wings. I'm also really interested to see as well whether new players will come in.
The National League North returns this Saturday with a full programme of action. Struggling Alfreton host Telford United. Spennymoor are making the long trip south to face 6th tier newcomers Bedford. 2 favourites for the league title, Chorley and Macclesfield, go head-to-head in Lancashire. Darlington are at home to Chester, while high-flying Fylde welcome Leamington to Mill Farm. Kings Lynn will traverse the country to play Marine, while Kidderminster play host to fellow full-time team Buxton. Merthyr Town will look to continue their good start to the season at home to Radcliffe. Scarborough and Oxford will try to put their FA Cup exits behind them as they face off against each other, while Southport are at home to Peterborough Sports. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Bullscas. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week to discuss all of the latest action from Hereford FC. Until then, it's bye for now.
This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.